I want to recognize, and I was recognized in 2021 as being a champion for adult sickle cell disease, along with my colleague. Let me just pause for a moment because certainly the work that I did in 2021, 2022 could not be possible without a village. And the village is certainly the members of the Legislative Black Caucus. And I'm grateful to have been standing side by side with my former colleague, now the secretary, the California State Secretary, Dr. Shirley Weber, who was the Legislative Black Caucus chair during that time, who knew the importance of this fight, and made sure that every one of my colleagues also lend themselves to this fight, where we're able to get the $15 million to create the centers across California. And so that is no small task. And let me simply say that this work that we've done has received national recognition, and others are trying to emulate what California has done. And it continues to go on and on. But Mary talked about, and I think it's absolutely relevant to this conversation, me being in this space. And I would have been in this space had I not made a promise. You have to be careful who you promise something to. And so when I was on the Carson City Council for almost 10 years, the founder of the city of Carson, the founder of Cal State University Meeting Seals by the name of Gilbert Smith. Gilbert Smith's son was born with sickle cell. At the same time, his wife, Jeffrey Smith's mother, took care of Jeffrey at Martin Luther King Hospital. She was a registered nurse. So she was a nurse at Martin Luther King Hospital taking care of her son who had sickle cell disease at the same time. And so Jeffrey Smith died at 23 years of age from complications of this disease. And I don't need to talk about the rare disease and what it means and the pain that people go through who live with sickle cell disease. And so Gil Smith, when I decided to run for the California State Legislature in 2014, he said, "Mike, when you win." And I said, "Well, I got to win first." But he said, "When you win, because I believe you will win, I need you to promise me one thing." And I was like, "Okay." And he said, "Would you promise that you do something in the space around sickle cell? Something to make sure that my son's memory continue to live on." And so I said yes, not knowing, Mary, what I was getting myself into. But I took it on, partnered with you and Tony, and we got the work done. And the very first sickle cell center that we opened up was and is at Martin Luther King Community Hospital. And it bears the name of Jeffrey Smith, to be a reminder of the struggle, but also the reality that people die from this. And people are misunderstood as a result of their diagnosis. I don't know if we have any survivors or people who have sickle cell in this room, but going to a hospital and trying to convince people you're not just on the drugs, it becomes a difficult thing. And then trying to convince them why you're in pain, excruciating pain, and not getting the support that you need. And that's because the understanding is not there. Now, I think my responsibility is to making sure that everyone understands this, especially those in the medical professional field, that everyone is not just wanting drugs, but people live with this disease. And it's excruciating when people live with this particular disease. But it's important that we continue to have not only the comprehensive support, but also the coordination of care for everyone who lives with this disease, whether it's the disease or the trait. And so I'm happy to continue to be a drum major in this space because, one, I believe it's worth fighting for. Let me say that again. It's worth fighting for. And so you have a friend, you have a brother, you have someone who will stand toe-to-toe with you. And I like the theme, policy to progress. There cannot be any real progress without struggle. And so we're in the struggle, but we're in the struggle together, and we will have the progress that we're looking for. So thank you very much.
So we just want to give you a little bit of a background about how we actually got started once Mike said yes. When Mike said yes, then the ball started kind of coming off the train, to tell you the wheels started coming off the cart. Our goal, Dr. Nugent and I, was to try to find points where persons with sickle cell disease had access to care. Mm-hmm. That was our issue. Adults with sickle cell disease did not have access. We do pretty good with pediatric population, but after that transition period comes a big dark hole that we felt we needed to begin to address. Tony Gonzalez came to an event that we had celebrating the Sickle Cell Disease Foundation's 60th anniversary. I didn't know Tony from a hole in the floor. But Tony was invited by Mike Rogers, who's a part of our board of directors, and Tony was moved by the patient testimonials, the information that he received, honoring our leaders in healthcare. And later on that year, he asked me about, would you all like to have me work with you in this endeavor? I said, sure, but we cannot afford you, Tony. And Tony said, that's not the issue. This is pro bono. I'm impressed. I'm moved. So we started working, and we have a trifecta. Dr. Nugent supports the clinical team. I support community, and Jennifer Fields, who owns a business in North Carolina, is the patient voice that we use throughout this process and is still involved with us, with the foundation. She helped bring all of those issues that we wanted to address to achieve our goal as we started to open these clinics. So that's a little bit of the background of how things work with us. And now I'd like to get Dr. Nugent to kind of give you a little bit more information about where we are today.
Thanks, Mary. What you can see in our slide that was just up there, I just want to say one sentence, and that is, as a physician and a provider, for me, and I know for my colleagues, there's a big disconnect between how to make things happen. I mean, in clinic, we can see that there's not access to care, that our patients are having problems, and yet 80, some cases, 90% of our patients are Medi-Cal managed care patients in this state. And so for me, the big learning lesson, and Mary and I keep saying we're going to write a paper about this, is how do you change healthcare? And the way that it has to happen is through policy. And I think I'm really thankful to our legislators in California and Tony for helping us to understand how to change policy so that we can change healthcare. It doesn't really happen any other way. Now, the voice to our policy folks want to hear from us what needs to be done. And so that's where, again, our patients, our advocacy, and our community of providers really work together. But this has been so important, and it's a huge lesson, and I really believe in it. And I believe in what we've been able to do. And here's an example of what resulted from that first slide that Mary showed, that we were seeing that our patients were dying at age 43. That's the mean age, which meant, as you just heard from Mike, some patients were dying in their late 20s. Basically leaving our great pediatric sickle cell care system and becoming adults, they had nowhere to transition to. And so they began just going to the ER when they had pain crisis, being hospitalized if it was uncontrollable. And everybody in this room and on this Zoom needs to understand that sickle cell is characterized by pain and anemia, but those are the peripheral, superficial signs that organs are dying because blood flow is not getting there. So that's why the patients have excruciating pain. That's why they're anemic. And that is why they need to come to good clinics for preventative, comprehensive care to prevent that progression of disease. We absolutely know we can do it. Other parts of the world, mean life expectancy for sickle cell in England is 71 years. They have an organized system. So we understood that what we needed was to start developing, as Mary said, access to comprehensive care to prevent all of those things. Now, we were able, thanks to the funding that Mike helped shepherd for us, to get these 12 specialty clinics set up, training people, increase the community healthcare workers. Sickle cell is one of those disorders where you can't just manage it through medicine alone. The community cannot manage it alone. It has to be a partnership, so the community health workers are key for us. So we've been reshaping that healthcare delivery system, and as Mike and others have said, it's now a model elsewhere. But with early data from the CDC, when we are maximizing care to the probably 4,000 state adult patients, 4,000 to 6,000 adults with sickle cell, we could be saving on the order of $80 to $100 million a year just in fewer ER visits, fewer hospitalizations, and shorter length of stay. I really want to make sure that we get to the patients. So I'm going to just give an example of how the network worked together for one of our patients. Her name is Gloria. And this is a patient who had been out of care. She had transitioned out of a great pediatric system, but was being managed by a well-meaning provider in the community that had really very little experience in sickle cell. And he thought that he could just help her get better if he just kept giving her blood transfusions, which is a common mistake. Unfortunately, first of all, a lot of sickle cell patients are comfortable with their level of anemia. As long as they're not having a pain or other crisis, they're comfortable being a little bit anemic, so they don't need that blood. But what happens when we give blood is that we become massively iron overloaded. And this young lady, I think she was in her mid-20s, and she had already developed full liver failure, mid-20s, right, Mary? Her age, yeah. And she had iron overload and liver failure. She went to one of our UC campuses, was diagnosed as terminal liver failure and not a candidate for liver transplant because she had sickle cell. So was sent home to die in her mid-20s. Now, because we had our network, and you'll see a picture of us, we were all at one of our first meetings of all the network clinics together. We heard about that at that meeting. And right away, Mary and I were able to reach out to another center that had liver transplants, and we said, sickle cell is not a contraindication for liver transplant. Would you see her? And this center was down in San Diego. Dr. Gopal, one of our network physicians, got her in there and got her liver transplant, and she's doing wonderful. Praise the Lord. So, but that's an example of how the network works together. Everybody goes through sickle cell boot camp. Everybody gets trained. All the community health workers, our PAs, our nurses, and so there is a common peer-reviewed system that we use. We wrote our own guidelines, thanks to Dr. Elliot Kuczynski. The practice is across the state in our 12 clinics the same, so patients can move from one. We're very proud of that, and I really want to give you an example of one of our great clinics. We have 3 individuals here today, a provider and 2 patients who will be able to speak to that. Megan, do we want to do the video first or have our panel? I'm just looking at the time.
Yeah, we do have Captain Wong on Zoom
That's right.
with us.
Sorry, Captain Wong. Let me have Mary go ahead and introduce Captain Wong, who's another one of our great supporters. That's what I get for not looking at our script.
It gives me great pleasure right now to introduce Captain David Wong. He's with HHS and someone who I have known for a while. We used to bump into each other from time to time at various conferences, and I think David realized at the time that he met me that I was the person who was not going to let any grass grow under my feet when it came to trying to figure out how we could better serve people with sickle cell disease. So from the federal level, I'd like to just introduce Dr. David Wong and ask him to provide a few words to you all. David?
Great. I just want to do a sound check. Can you hear me okay? Yes. Okay, I'm going to try to turn on my camera here as well. Oh, I think that setting needs to be reset, but I'll get started. First of all, I'm so excited to be here today and hear about this program and the community. I wish I were there in person. As Mary said, I was working on sickle cell in 2018 to 2020. That's when I met Mary, Dr. Nugent, and Jennifer. And she's absolutely right. You know, Mary is fearless and she acts with a sense of urgency. And a couple other things that I really noticed about her and the group that she works with that have assembled this amazing program here today. this clinical program, is they really take the time to listen to the voice of individuals living with sickle cell disease. And they think very strategically about the partnerships that are needed to achieve success. And I'm hearing that here in what has been presented by Mary and Dr. Nugent. And so really congratulations for receiving the funding where you could do even more than what you were doing with some of the HRSA funding. And the work is just so impressive. And as folks have said earlier, it really is a model for what the whole country should be doing moving forward. So hats off to all of you. And I know we're running a little bit behind on schedule, so I just want to say a few things really quickly. I came back to sickle cell after doing COVID deployments and just community health worker activities for a few years. I just restarted with sickle cell 2 months ago, but I just want to say that I could not ask for stronger leadership and support for sickle cell at HHS when you have Secretary Becerra, as you know, coming from California, and Admiral Rachel Levine, who's the Assistant Secretary for Health. They're two of the largest champions for sickle cell. They're really providing a lot of support. My position, the Senior Advisor for Sickle Cell Disease, was created. It's a brand new position. It's never existed before. They're really excited about the work that we are doing, but we know that we need to do more. And so just a couple quick highlights for some of the federal work, because I know we want to talk more about this California program, but I have to mention that, I think most people are tracking, but the FDA approved 2 milestone gene therapy treatments for sickle cell disease who are 12 years or older last December. One of these treatments is CRISPR-based technology. It's the very first FDA-approved therapy to utilize CRISPR. And essentially, this is a game changer, really, for the sickle cell community in terms of the types of therapies that are available to them. Now, it's going to take time. These are expensive therapies. It's not going to be a solution for everyone right away, but we're working on that. There are things like the CMS cell gene therapy access model, which was announced in January to make some of these treatments more affordable for folks who are on Medicaid. We also want to talk about, of course, the CDC data collection, sickle cell data collection program. California is one of the first 2 original states. Last year, CDC expanded their funding, and now they're up to 16 states that are participating in that data program, and that's approximately 50% of the entire sickle cell population in the US. And then also have to mention, of course, NIH and all their groundbreaking science, the Cure Sickle Cell Initiative to continue to drive therapies. And then, of course, HRSA, Health Resources and Services Administration. There are 2 big grant programs, Sickle Cell Disease Treatment Program, Newborn Screening Follow-Up Program. Of course, Dr. Nugent and Mary are both grantees of those programs, so they're always kind of on the cutting edge. And those are great opportunities to seed funding, share best practices across the country, across these various grantees that are all also very committed for sickle cell. So I'll just end that. I'm so impressed again with this program. Many of the things that Dr. Nugent mentioned, like the challenges with transitional care, accessing comprehensive care, particularly as adults, looking at things like quality of life. These are all issues that we've been hearing as well from the sickle community, and these are ones that we're going to start to do more work in, do more coordination across the office. But we really need people in the field like Mary and Dr. Nugent and Jennifer to really take these funding ideas, supports, turn them into real programs, real activities and services for individuals living with sickle cell on the ground. So really, again, applaud everyone's effort today. And thanks for having me speak for a few minutes. And again, I apologize that I wasn't able to attend in person. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Now's the time for us to hear how well we're doing our work, to be honest with you. And therefore, I'd like to ask Christine, Tamika, and Amber Lee to come forward. So in my humble opinion, the champions in this room are Tamika and Kimberly. Tamika, can you give a little description of who you are, what you do, and how life is treating you these days?
My name is Tamika Rich, and I am 45-year-old sickle cell patient, type SS. I've been living in California all my adult life since the early 2000s and connected to the UC Davis Health Clinic for Care since about 2008 or so. I work for a nonprofit with a social mission to create employment opportunity for people with disabilities. I absolutely love that work. Very meaningful to me. Also, I have recently been able to become more active in my community and doing some advocacy work, which I also equally enjoy. I am excited about the progression of care for adults with sickle cell in general, and I'm happy to be a part of that movement.
Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Amber Lee Leslie. I moved to California in 2021 for a job to lobby the legislature on housing issues. I'm no longer a registered lobbyist, I work for the housing department now. But yeah, I was really taken by the remark that you made just about how people with sickle cell are in every community. We're your neighbors, we're your colleagues. This is the first time that I'm doing any kind of sickle cell advocacy because it's something that, I want it to be a thing that is just a part of my life, not the main thing in my life. And thanks to a lot of the work that you guys are doing, that might be a little bit more real for me. So yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Christine, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Christine Sickle. I'm a nurse practitioner at UC Davis Cancer Center. I provide 100% care to sickle cell patients Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And so with that, I support our 2 docs who are very active in research and and also on a federal level with policymaking. And I've just been so grateful to NCSCC for being able to provide me the time to be a part of our patients' lives. I've been able to spend the time with our patients and have more clinic time, getting to know our patients. If anything comes up, if there's an emergency, I'm able to make the space for them, get them in. So yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions that I would like to ask you all. So if you will indulge me, I'm going to read these questions so I don't mess them up. So this one is for Tamika and for Amber. And Amber, would you answer the question first? So what are some of the benefits of having the UC Davis Sickle Cell Clinic and the services and resources they have available for you as you go through life?
They are many. As I mentioned, I wasn't actually always a patient at UC Davis. When I moved here, I was a part of another major health system. As many people do when they get a job, they just go to the healthcare provider that their insurance offers. I also have a type of sickle cell that is a little less common, beta thalassemia, and so it presents a little bit differently. So when I first actually needed to access healthcare, I did go to the emergency room of that hospital, but it was for a cut on my toe. And I was admitted, and they gave me a blanket dose of antibiotics. They discharged me after a day and told me to follow up with podiatry. So then I followed up with podiatry, and they said, nothing's wrong, follow up with wound care. And then I followed up with wound care, and they gave me some dressings, and they said, come back if anything gets worse. And things progressively got worse despite me diligently taking care of myself, to the point where I actually couldn't walk anymore. And it wasn't until I contacted a primary care physician, a Black woman, and I broke down to her. I was like, nothing's happening. She was the one who had to coordinate my hematologist and all of these other specialties to figure something out. And that whole process took about a year of me just kind of doing that self-advocacy. And it really pushed me to then lobby my employer to get better health insurance so I could come to UC Davis. Because one of the consults, it got so bad that they had to do an external consult with the clinic. And that's how I got connected. And so, earlier this year, I had another bad issue, but I won't go into the details of that. But just in terms of differences, instead of me being out of commission and missing work for a year, I only was out for 3 months. Christine, Dr. Adesina for attending, they listen. I mean, that is something that every patient, no matter what your healthcare status is, you want your clinician to pay attention to the things that you are taking the time to express to them. We don't take that for granted. And I also think something that's really unique about the clinic, you guys do take your educator role very seriously. I think I've learned a lot about the disease myself. And, this issue with my toe, had they been treating me, I would have known right away that actually foot ulcers are a very common problem for people with sickle cell disease. Actually, the pills that you take every day might slow down your healing. So I might have had a totally different experience over the course of that year that I've been with you guys first. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I have benefited in many ways as well from being a patient at UC Davis Health Clinic. When I first came to California as an adult, about 21 or 22, I received all of my pediatric care growing up in Maryland. My dad was in the military, so at a military hospital on Andrews Air Force Base. And so that was all I knew. And I didn't really know a whole lot about how to take care of myself when it came to sickle cell, other than if I find an emergency room, they'll give me some medicine so I can get out of this excruciating pain, hopefully, right? And so prior to being connected to UC Davis, that was the extent of medical care, because that is all that I knew to do. So I would go to the emergency room when I had a sickle cell crisis. I would, be in the hospital, and that was basically the extent of care that I received. But for the first time, I experienced medical care professionals in the ER and in the hospital that didn't know anything about sickle cell. They were kind of as knowledgeable as I was about how to take care of myself. And for the first time, I experienced stigma relative to being a person who's saying that they're in excruciating pain, asking for opioid type medications, being a Black woman and just looked at with a stereotypical lens because of that lack of knowledge. I experienced a lot of secondary medical crises that I think were relative to just the mistreatment of the initial sickle cell crises that I came into the ER for. And so that, prolonged my stays in hospitals many times. And some of those incidents were even life-threatening. And it wasn't until about maybe 6 years of me living in this area that finally there was, God bless her, I don't remember her name, but a social worker in the hospital that said, hey, you need to be seeing, a hematologist that knows something about sickle cell, and you need to go over here to UC Davis and see this doctor. And so I did. And from there, I was able to receive care that I feel like helped me to improve my life, because like Amber Lee stated, I also was able to learn from my doctor, who's still my doctor today, about how to take care of myself. I was able to have someone who was knowledgeable about sickle cell to be able to, prescribe me, therapeutic prescriptions that would help me, that was able to understand, when things were secondary or relative to sickle cell, other things that were going on with me that needed to be treated. And so I was able to get into a place where I was able to understand how to be well and how to kind of be in the best health as possible and to take care of myself, something that I had not been taught before. and that took quite a while of a journey and many challenges for me to get to. So I'm very grateful for that. I think that, you know, the staff at the clinic is very knowledgeable. And over the time of being a patient there and with all of the new funding that we've had in recent years, I've watched that care enhance even further to include many other things that I benefit from as a patient there. And so I'm extremely grateful that, you know, I've gotten to a place in my life where I can participate in life. You know, I feel like I show up for myself. I've been able to, you know, complete school and retain employments, enjoy social activities with family and friends, and even get involved in my community and hobbies and interests and things that I enjoy. So I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you. Christine, as a provider, what are the benefits of being part of a network of sickle cell?
Yeah, being part of the network of sickle cell clinics provides us as providers with invaluable opportunities to collaborate and stay in the know as it relates to advancements in sickle cell care. Through these regular interactions, we have what's called echo calls, where we get to both teach and learn from each other. And so one of the things that I learned that was pretty shocking to me is that by the age of 18, 4 out of 10 people living with sickle cell disease have suffered a silent cerebral infarct. And so this isn't an overt stroke with one-sided weakness. That's an obvious sign where we can all see. These are silent strokes that impact things like memory, executive function. And so, you know, here we are with these 18-year-olds that are about to launch into adulthood. Adulting is hard already, right? It's like the brain isn't fully developed until the mid-20s. Kids are trying to figure out careers, education. And then on top of that, nearly half of them end up with this silent stroke. And so before we were able to join NCSCC, I didn't know this. You know, I was just one of the many NPs in our busy hem-onc clinic. I spent 80% of my time caring for people with cancers, 20% sickle cell disease. And so as you know, people with cancers, they have many, many issues. And so if my patient with sickle cell disease forgot to come to an appointment, I didn't really have the time to call them. I would have to pick up and, you know, put out the next fire, everything. But once we joined NCSCC, we had the time. We were able to learn from Dr. Diane Nugent and many other docs. And we realized, like, some of our patients, they just need these extra phone calls. If they don't show up, we need to call them. Some of them need to come in at the same time every single week, you know, Wednesday, 1 o'clock, because that's something that you remember, not once every 3 months. So yeah, it has really been such a wonderful opportunity. Because of NCSCC, I've been able to get to know Tamika and Amberly. And it just has been such a privilege.
Thank you, Christine. And you are one of the gems of the NCSCC. So, Amber, how has the UC Davis Clinic and NCSCC Clinic been a positive impact on your life?
Yeah, I want to echo a lot of what was shared already. Whenever I talk to people for the first time about what sickle cell disease is, you know, I'll give them the breakdown that it's a blood disorder and all these other ways and how, but it's a whole body kind of disease. I always try to remind people that anywhere your blood goes, that's where there's potential for impact here. And it also requires like somebody, the clinicians have to be generalists in certain ways, but they have to be specialized in other ways to really know, like, this is how this more general thing is going to impact this population. For me, as somebody who was a professional advocate, personal advocates, just we kind of like learn being patients, not having resources, how to become our own voice when we're in the hospital and people aren't listening to us. It has been very refreshing and almost a little jarring, but welcoming to have somebody else who is willing to be in that fight with you or fight for you. I don't think people realize, like, chronic illness is a full-time job anyway. When you're sick, when you're having some sort of healthcare breakdown, like, you need a partner who's as dedicated as you as well to, like, help navigate the system when you're in there. And so that's what the system has meant for me. It's just, I get to relax a little bit. I don't take it for granted, but like that's part of it for me.
I think that we hear a lot in our interaction with some of the folks that are part of the clinics that they're learning more about how to navigate and live with their disease, not let the disease move them, but they can help to understand the processes that they have. Tamika, what does it mean to you to have coordinated healthcare?
I'm so grateful. It means everything to be able to have coordinated care. I think, just watching the enhancements to care over time at the clinic, I've benefited greatly, and it's also awesome to know that the other patients with sickle cell are benefiting just as much as I'm benefiting, and that I can be a part of that. I remember once upon a time, I couldn't always get into the infusion clinic portion to receive care, and I would much prefer to go to the infusion clinic rather than the ER. I've had so many not so good experiences in the emergency room at hospital, and I've seen where that is now enhanced and even available 7 days a week. Sometimes I would think I was cursed, right, because I would have a crisis on the weekend, and I'm like, darn it, I can't get into the infusion clinic, right? But not a problem anymore. I've seen where we've added a licensed clinical social worker to the care at the clinic. This has been super beneficial. I think a lot of people don't realize how much chronic illness and mental health go hand in hand. And it's awesome to have somebody that you can talk to about something that's considered rare, like sickle cell disease. And they understand, how that, not just from a medical perspective, but I think it enhances the overall wellness and care as a person. I feel like I'm cared for as a person, that my entire wellness is important as somebody who's a member of the community and not just a patient that comes in to get medical care. And so just having, someone that I can get mental health counseling from when I'm going through things. I had a brother pass away 2 years ago. And I can't tell you how much that Angelus, our licensed clinical social worker, was helpful to just sit there and listen to me talk about how stressed out I was and how much that impacted my life and how scared I was that, no, I'm going to, now be physically impacted. And sickle cell is going to rear its ugly head because I'm stressed, and just how helpful that was. Having a peer mentor support group now. It's something that I've been, as a patient, asking for a really long time. Helping us to be able to find ways to support each other. Helping the adolescents that are coming into adult care understand how to navigate that and how important it is to take care of yourself so they can avoid some of the pitfalls that I experienced, right? With the crash and burn in the ER, the stigma and things like that, and not knowing where my resources were. Having a community healthcare worker to plug us into other resources outside of the clinic and in our community to understand the needs, because we have lives, even when we're not dealing with complications from sickle cell. We have to navigate day-to-day life. And, some of those resources were what, kind of introduced me to this line of advocacy that I'm in now. So I'm so grateful for that. And knowing that, there's hope for the future, right? Because I see where, these things are now in place. And, people who are older patients, but younger patients too, now we have, more opportunity to thrive with all of those resources in place for us and experience increased quality of life. I'm super grateful for all of the enhancements to the care.
So full disclosure, my brother-in-law, Wayne Reagan, passed in 2012 from complications associated with sickle cell disease. He was 59 years of age. And I watched him. I watched his care over the years. And he had just a cluster of doctors around him. If this was going wrong, they contacted him. They all knew his whole cycle. And that's the one thing I said, why in the world can we not have that here in California? Why can't we duplicate what he did and what he had? And that's what drove me and Diane, I think, to really kind of pull this together, to make available for persons with sickle cell disease everything that they need at one spot. And that's what NCSCC has done. So to my brother Wayne, who said to me right before he passed, don't forget the adults. I don't think we've forgotten the adults. And I hope he's pleased with where we're going with NCSCC. Dr. Nugent, thank you all. Don't move. Yeah. Okay, I'm off my game right now. And one of the things is my mind just starts moving when I hear from you all. Because it means there's so much more for us to do. So thank you for that. Dr. Ted Love has been someone who's been in our corner for quite a while. He was the former CEO, as stated, with Global Blood Therapeutics, and helped us to really start a project. He is a phenomenal physician that really is very supportive of our work and research. And now he's got a video presentation for just a couple minutes. He'd like to say a few words. Can you cue up Dr. Love?
Good day, everyone. I'm Ted Love. I'm a physician scientist by training. I began my career in academic medicine in Boston. For the last 30 years, I've been here in California, focused on making disease-modifying therapies for some of the world's most egregious diseases, from heart disease to cancer. However, the last 10 years, I've focused on sickle cell disease, and that's really why I'm here today. The first thing I want to do is thank all of you at the NCSCC for allowing me to speak with you briefly today. Many of you already know sickle cell is in fact one of the most egregious diseases in the world. It affects people starting before their first birthday. Many of the patients have debilitating pain crises. Essentially all of the patients suffer from profound anemia, which results in progressive multi-organ failure and death prior to their 50th birthday. Unlike many of the other diseases, however, in this country, sickle cell disease has been largely ignored. I compare it often to cystic fibrosis, where we provide excellent care to patients, and we were doing this even when I was in training at Yale and later at the Mass General in Boston. This is exactly how it should be for these patients, and it should be the same for patients with sickle cell, but it's not. It's been well documented, however, that if we provide comprehensive, preventative sickle cell care, we can actually not only improve the lives of these patients, we can dramatically reduce the healthcare costs associated with caring for them. I want to encourage you all to do everything within your power to provide comprehensive sickle cell care for patients here in California, and I stand ready to help you in any way that I possibly can to make that happen. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Dr. Nugent.
I want to thank everyone, but especially our panel, and especially the patients who spoke with real honesty about what it's like to be impacted by a healthcare system that either works against you or works with you. And, you know, one of the things that really hearing Tamika, you say that, you know, you said that you now felt that you were a part of the community and that we're caring for you as a community member. And, you know, I think for Mary and I, that's where the community and healthcare really come together. What if each of us felt that going to the doctor was this embrace of you as a community member. You're not well. Let us take care of you. Let us make you feel so good that you can be part of the community again. I mean, how powerful is that? To have people, each and every person has got so many gifts. And if we can get, for any of us, whether it's sickle cell or other rare disorders, as Dr. Love said, these other disorders that are so impactful, what if our healthcare were really much more compassionate and much more embracing and saw us as both Amber Lee and as Tamika just said, as people who can be trained and empowered to manage themselves. Our healthcare system is broken. People need to learn how to manage their own care. And what we're seeing is Google Doc, right? People can't get into their doctor for weeks and weeks. So, okay, what can I do? I'm going to go and find out what Google Doc says. This network, I think, is a model for the way we should be doing healthcare. And I think that our patients are teaching us how to do that. We are not teaching this in our medical schools right now, and we're not teaching it to our residents. So I want to thank you for continuing to teach me, continuing to forgive us for not doing as good a job as we should, but we're really trying now to make a difference. And this is what I'm talking about, where the community and the healthcare system need to work together and learn. I'm happy to hear that teaching and what you've learned, of course you're in a great clinic, UC Davis is one of our favorites, is educating and understanding your disease is the power that you need to remain well. And what we're trying to do in going forward is to continue to empower that model of care. And I'm just proud to be in California because they're taking a risk on us, and they believe in us, and they believe in this network. And I think everybody who's in this room believes in that network and believes in that care. How can we empower our patients and ourselves to be a compassionate community service, embracing our patients and helping them be all that they can be? And I think you two are wonderful examples of the patients that are now going through our clinic. And that's our path forward, to figure out a way to now take the network as it stands and build it and incorporate it into California's healthcare system. Mary and I are meeting with leaders in DHCS and to understand how this model can be incorporated. Fortunately, we live in a state who's got a lot of innovation, a lot of models. So we're hoping to make that transition, that leap now. We've been supported by, I want to be sure and mention, the Department of Public Health, which is where the funding went initially. And they helped us to put this network together. And you guys, thank you so much for helping us build it. So Mary, we want to have a closing voice. And I want to thank everybody, both on Zoom, for sending in questions. We're here. Perhaps, Megan, if there are any that Mary and I can answer.
I think we're out of time, but since we have them written down, we'll make sure to answer
Okay,
them.
great. We'll be sure and get back to you on the questions. Go ahead, Mary.
So just on behalf of NCSCC, again, thanking the legislators here in California for giving us the opportunity to do what we need to do for you all. Thank you, and watch us grow. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.